Hi, my name is Ashley Mendoza. I am doing the assignment on rule governed behavior using the Alex's rule. If I don't get an A in this class, I'm a failure. So I'll be explaining why this is the example of the rule governed behavior and how the neutral stimuli related to the coursework can acquire anxiety-induced functions through the transformation of stimulus function and identify the potential avoidance behaviors maintained by the negative reinforcement. His statement is a rule governed behavior. It represents the control of the verbal rule rather than the direct contact with the contingencies in the environment. The rule is if I don't get an A, I'm a failure. Functions as a verbal antecedent that is established through rigid contingency between academic performance and self-worth. I feel like we've all been there. And this differs from the contingency-shaped behavior, which we also have been through, which develops through a repeated exposure through environmental consequences. So it's studying, self-monitoring, and emotional responses are guided by the verbal rule itself, not by the history of the reinforcement or punishment directly tied to receiving these specific grades. Therefore, the rule exerts verbal control over Alex's responding, illustrating the influence of language on behavior in the absence of direct contingencies. So next, part 2, we're going to discuss the transformation of stimulus function. Through the relational framing, the verbal rule transforms the functions of previously neutral stimuli associated with coursework. Elements such as assignment deadlines, professor emails, and classroom interactions now acquire those adverse functions due to their derived relation with failure. For example, there's a notification on an oncoming exam, which typically would serve as a natural cue to prepare, and instead now provokes a physiological and emotional response such as tension or anxiety. The transformation of the stimulus function occurs because the verbal rule established a relational network connecting neutral academic stimuli to the negative private events, thereby altering how Alex responds to the stimuli. In part 3, the avoidance behavior and the maintenance. We're going to go into the transformation of these stimuli, increasing the likelihood of avoidance or escape behaviors. He might engage in these behaviors such as procrastination. He might avoid feedback or do excessive studying, all in an attempt to reduce that discomfort that is elicited by anxiety-induced stimuli. These behaviors are maintained by the negative reinforcement, however, such as avoiding or escaping coursework-related tasks temporarily to decrease his anxiety. I feel like we've all been there too. And however, this pattern is also perpetuates a rigid rule following and limits the contact with potential corrective contingencies over time. This avoidance cycle can maintain inflexible responding and contribute to chronic academic stress or burnout. Been there. Not at the academic level, but at the work level. So I feel Alex very hard in this. The Alex rule represents rule-governed behavior because it controls responding through the verbal mediation rather than through direct contingencies. The rule transforms neutral academic stimuli into aversive through derived relational networks, resulting in avoidance behavior maintained by negative reinforcement. Poor guy. This example highlights how rigid self-rules can restrict behavioral flexibility and lead to maladaptive patterns in academic contexts. For my reference, I used Ming as Dixon, MR, and Hayes, the behavior analysis and the verbal behavior development approach. Thank you so much for your time. This was a very fun assignment for me to work on, and I really enjoyed it. I personally related to it at the work level, and I absolutely love incorporating this into my career and see the relevance of it on an everyday manner. And thank you so much for your opportunity. Again, this is Ashley Mendoza with the assignment on rule governed behavior for fall 2025. Ciao.